Yo, what's up, everybody? Just wanted to take a little bit of time and make a quick video for you. Today, I kind of want to go over the four stages of learning and how we can use this when we're starting a business, starting a new sales career, basically when we're starting anything. This is kind of the way people learn. And so wanted to make this for you so that way you guys can understand that, anytime we're starting something new in life, that it's a process and that we're not going to be good right off the bat. And so I actually learned this years ago through a sales training. I'm not quite sure where it originated from, but so far I found this to be true over my 10 plus years in sales. And so, to start off, I just want to go with, this first stage in learning is what we call unconscious incompetence, meaning when we're starting something, it's we're dumb and we don't even know we're dumb. And that's not to insult anybody or make you feel bad, but I like to liken, these four stages of learning, kind of like driving a car. When we're first learning to drive, we show up at driver's ed and we're excited, and all we know is we want to drive, but we don't know all the rules of the road. We don't know, when to hit the brake, when to hit the gas. We don't know what we don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so when we're starting in a sales career or in entrepreneurship or in personal development or basically anything in life, once you start down this road, we're all excited. We're in what we call a forming stage where we're high excitement and high energy, but we don't know what we don't know. Now, it's important to remember that when you start off, you're going to get some sales or some success in this first stage. The reason is sales is the transfer of energy and emotion. And even though you don't know what you're doing quite yet, people will feel that energy and that excitement level, and that causes them to want to do business with you. And so that first stage we got to remember is what we call unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. As we learn and develop and we grow, we get into what we call conscious incompetence. We're now aware that we don't know a lot. Typically, when we get into this stage, we enter what we call a storming stage, which means we're low skill and low excitement. All of a sudden, we realize this is going to be a way bigger project than we figured out. Kind of like driving the car when you get into driver's ed. At first, you were all excited, but then as you have to start studying the manual and getting ready for the tests and your first drives, you're very aware that there's a lot of stuff you don't know yet. When you start in sales or in entrepreneurship, it's important to remember that this is a process. Okay. This is the stage that most people give up. All of a sudden, they become discouraged. They don't want to push through. This is when stress and anxiety hit us the most. It's because we're in that stage of learning. We're very aware that there's stuff that we don't know and that this is going to be a way bigger project and process than what we first originally thought. Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't get that out. But it's important to remember no person that's great in anything started great when they started. I always say nobody walked into the NBA the day they picked up a basketball. It took years of practice, years of training to get to where they're professional at it. So you've got to remember just because you're not finding the success you want right now, it's part of the process. We're simply learning. And those that keep going are going to get success. And then eventually we get into what we call a conscious competent stage. This is we now know what we're doing, but we have to think about it all the time. I again relate this to like going through driver's ed. After you've been on your first couple drives, you've read the manual, you now know, sorry, how to drive the car, but you have to think about it. You have to think about when to turn your blinker on, when you should brake, how much feet you need behind the next car so you don't rear end them. You have to put a lot of conscious thought into that, but you now know what you're doing. Just like in sales and entrepreneurship, especially if you're doing like cold calls or knocking on doors or anything like that, you have to think of the one liner, think of what you're going to say next, think of your pitch, have that stuff memorized. But if you keep pushing through it and through practice and practice and more practice, we get into what we call, oh, and that stage is called the norming stage, by the way. Sorry, I almost skipped that. Norming is when we have rising skill and growing excitement. Our excitement's coming back. We're starting to get some success. We know, what to do. We just have to think about it a lot. But if we keep pushing forward, we get to the best stage, which is where we call it unconscious competence. Now you don't have to think about it. All of a sudden it comes to you, just like driving a car. I'm going down the freeway in Salt Lake. I don't even think about driving, which I probably should. So all of you guys don't follow my example. Pay attention when you drive. But you can be listening to your music or having a conversation. You don't have to think about when to change the blinker or when to hit the brake. It comes to you naturally. Just like with sales or entrepreneurship or when you're starting your business or anything else in life, you get to a point where you now know and you don't have to constantly thinking about it. Have you ever talked to somebody like a sales guy or a business professional and you're like, man, how are they so good? They're a natural. Well, it's not that they started out as a natural, it's that they went through these four stages and now it just comes out of their mouth. Like literally, when I'm on the phone with somebody, most of the time I don't have to think about it. Or when I'm like knocking door to door, I don't have to think, what am I going to say? How am I going to get into this house? That stuff just kind of flows out. It's because I went through those four stages, just like you're going to have to do to get to where we're at a unconscious and competent level, which is what we call a performing stage. We've got high excitement again, we've got high energy, and this is where the magic happens. But so many people don't realize that this is a process. And all of a sudden, they quit when they're in that storming stage, which is only the second part of a process. They started the work, but because they let themselves get discouraged or they didn't see the success right away, or they didn't take daily deliberate action to get better, they never get to those next two levels, though, where you have to think about it and then where you're in a performing stage. And so that's kind of just a short tip I want to give you guys is that realize when you start either with us at Second Team or you're starting a business or whatever you do in life, realize there's a process to it. And as you learn and you grow, that's where confidence comes from. That's where the excitement comes from. And that's where the magic comes from. It's from going through those four stages. If you think about it, one of my favorite movies of all time, it's a Disney movie, is Glory Road back in the early 60s, if you're not very familiar with the story, but the movie's about the basketball team, Texas A&M, and they recruited all these people that nobody wanted, and they end up going almost undefeated, only lost one game and actually won a national title. It's based off a true story, but we don't ever watch it because they won the title. We watch it for the story, just like Remember the Titans. They went undefeated in that movie, based off a true story again. We don't watch it because for that title game. We watch because we want the story. Every great successful person has a story. Michael Phelps is one of the most decorated Olympians of all times. And so many people are like, I wish I had his swimming ability. I wish I could compete like that. But people don't know that for 6 years, he spent 2 to 4 hours in the pool every single day, counting Christmas and New Year's. We all have a story. So think about it. What do you want your story to be? And then once you figure that out, realize that it's just a four-step process. We're going to get some success at the beginning when we start because we're excited, but then we're going to get discouraged. We're going to have to go through the hard times. If you're calling, like cold calls, you're knocking on doors, you're going to have to go through that rejection. You're going to have to be told no over and over and over again and commit. And once you commit and you start learning and you start growing, that's where you become proficient. And then all of a sudden you become a performer because you stayed to it. So just remember, what do you want the story to be? And then once you've decided what that story is, stay committed, follow the process. Nobody, like I said, picks up a basketball and boom, they're instantly LeBron James. We all have to go through these steps. In whatever life endeavor we're choosing to go through, I promise you have to go through these. And so that's just something I want you guys to remember as you guys are making cold calls or starting your business or learning a new skill or growing. You determine what your life is going to be. And so figure out what you want, commit to it, practice every day, just get better every single day, and you're going to grow into what you want to be. One of my favorite stories, and this is what I'm going to end up with or end on, is the English cycling team. Now, I took this from a podcast. I've never fact checked it. For all I know, the person made it up, but I hold it as truth because I think it gives a really good point here. But back when bicycles were first invented, The English cycling team from England was the top cycling team in the world. They won the Olympics, they were winning every world race. They did amazing. Over time, though, they went from the best to the worst to where they went through 100-year drought before they ever even won a race. In fact, it got so bad that bicycle companies in Europe wouldn't sell to the English cycling team because they didn't want their brand to be associated with the English cycling team. They went from the best in the early 1900s to 100 years absolute worst. And then a new coach came, and I can't remember the coach's name. I probably should have looked that up. But this new coach came and he gave the idea of we don't need to try to go from the worst to the best. We need to focus on getting 1% better every day. Shave 1 second off your time, pedal a little harder, get a little better. And in a matter of, I think, 3 to 4 years, they went from the worst team in the world to winning almost every medal at the Olympics. They had guys win the Tour de France and then went back to one of the best teams in the world simply by focusing on getting 1% better every day. So remember, this is a process, this is a journey. You don't need to go from being way down to way up. You need to get a little better every day. Um, I was gonna end on that, but I'm gonna tell one more story just to end up. And this is from my own life. But when Nick and I started our Hyla office, Nick was running the Hyla office. I came and joined in January. And in January, we were doing average numbers. An average Hyla store sells about 20 to 30 Hylas a month. And we were doing average numbers. We had about 15 reps. And Nick and I came with that mentality of let's get a little better every day. Okay. By February, we sold 45, which is phenomenal for a store. Made tons of money. It was great. In March, COVID hit and we actually lost everything. We lost our reps, ended up going down to like 5 reps. We weren't making that much money. Matter of fact, we didn't make any money in March, barely anything in April. But come May, when we started again, we had to rebuild everything. But we focused on getting 1% better. In May, I believe we sold like 80. June, I think we sold like 90. And in July, we broke the record for the United States and we sold 119 units by getting 1% better. So it doesn't even take forever to get better. But if you commit to something and you just get better every single day and you're all in and you realize it's a process, you don't know the rewards that can happen or how fast they can happen when you focus on getting better every single day. It's just like they say, how do you eat an elephant? It's a bite at a time. So just remember, there's those 4 steps, which are we start out unconscious, incompetent. We're dumb and we don't even know we're dumb. Next, we go to conscious, incompetent. We now know that there's stuff we don't know. If we stick with it, though, we get to conscious competence, where we now know what we're doing, but we have to think about it. And then we get to that final stage, which is where all the fun comes in. It's the performing stage. We're unconscious competent. We don't even have to think about what we're doing. We know what we're doing. We're excited. We're confident. At that point, I say we're a professional. So just keep that in mind as you're building your business, growing your sales career, or starting something new, that's where we want to be and that this is a process. Just keep plugging on with it, and I promise you're going to get results.